Hi there, it's Emma from the Southeast branch here. Today I have a crochet craft for us to do. It's going to be a giant crocheted wall hanging. And you only need two things. You don't even need a crochet hook for this. This is for absolute beginners. And you need a stick that the wall hanging is going to hang from. And you need a big ball of yarn. So this one is merino wool, and I ordered it online with like Christmas money probably because I spend all my money on yarn. But these are not cheap, so I'm going to show you two different methods to make a big ball of yarn that you can use in exactly the same way as the yarn that I'm going to be using. So the other way to make the chunky yarn would be to use old t-shirts and cut them up into t-shirt yarn. So I'm going to show you that as well. First we'll start with the regular balls of yarn and making the super chunky yarn that way, and then we'll go on to the t-shirt yarn, and then we'll get to our wall hanging craft. Okay, so we have 6 little balls of yarn, and it's this chunky. If you go to a craft store, you're just going to find any sort of chunky weight yarn, and it will be about this size. So we need 6 different balls of this so that we can make the super chunky, super size yarn that we need for our project. So one way to do it would just be to pull from all 6 of the balls at the same time. So you would just gather up all the ends and follow along with the instructions just like this. The problem with that is you're going to end up getting really messed up, and if you have cats you definitely don't want to do that. You'll just get all in knots and it's not going to work out. So I think the easier way to do it is to just braid the balls of yarn together. So I'm just taking the 6 ends like this, and I'm going to make a big knot in the end. Now you'll notice I'm working on this project on my bed. You might want to either be on a bed or on a floor, just because you'll end up with yarn everywhere. So in order to braid it, I'm just going to weight down the end with the stick that we're going to use for our wall hanging. So it's straightforward braiding, just like you would braid hair. And you're going to just cross over from the outside and keep going until you get all done. So you see that this gives you the kind of width of yarn you're going to need for this particular project. So just go all the way down, just braiding until you get to the end, and then wrap it up into a ball, and that will give you a good starting point for this project. Alright, I'm going to show you another option which involves recycled t-shirts. So another way that we can make the super bulky yarn for this wall hanging is going to be with some old t-shirts that we're going to upcycle into yarn. So we'll start with a t-shirt and we'll end up with yarn that looks like this. And then from this stage, this is kind of similar to that yarn that we just worked with. So you're going to braid 3 of these in exactly the same way that we did with the bulky yarn in our last little segment. And that's going to give you the right size of yarn to do this project. So I'm just going to show you really quick. You start with a t-shirt, and I'm just going to start by cutting straight across right underneath the arms. Like that. And then you're going to chop off the hem at the bottom as well. I want to say a big thank you to Margaret, my colleague at Southeast, for giving me some of her old t-shirts to do this with. Okay, so once we've done that, you're going to go ahead and lay it out. So you'll see that the seams of the t-shirt are at the top and at the bottom. So you're going to fold up the bottom and leave about an inch at the top, like this. And then we're going to cut kind of 1-inch strips right up, and we're going to go just over where this top part is and leave a chunk attached at the top. So just like this. And if you meet me back, I'll have completed the rest of this. Okay, so I chopped all those pieces and then I just laid it out flat. So you'll see at the top it's still attached, and we've cut all these lines all across. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take it from the top and put this seam vertical like this and lay it out. It looks kind of like a rib cage. And then what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and we're going to snip this off because we don't need the label. And where you see this, you're going to be cutting diagonally. So you don't want to cut where it's directly opposite the cut on the other side. You want to cut diagonally. So we're going to make our first cut like this. And then to get a big long joined up line of yarn, we're going to carry on the diagonal. So this one chops up to that one, and from here to there. Now I'm just showing you this really quickly, but there's actually a lot of videos online on how to turn t-shirts into t-shirt yarn. So if you want more detail or ideas on how to use the top part of the t-shirt as well as the bottom part that I'm showing you, you might want to have a look online for that. So then our last one is going to be like this. And then we're going to just stretch out the t-shirt material so that it becomes this kind of shape, and that allows us to work with it more like yarn. And from here you can go ahead and just wind it up into a ball, just like this. So once you have at least 3 of these, you're going to use exactly the same method that we used with the chunky yarn in the last section. Okay, so once you've made your 3 balls of yarn from the t-shirts, you're going to either pull from all 3 balls like this and follow along with me in the next section to make the wall hanging this way, or you could tie a knot and braid these 3 into super chunky yarn just like we did in the last section with the chunky regular kind of yarn. So either way, you're going to end up with a big ball of super chunky yarn. You're probably going to need a bunch more, like you probably would need I mean at least 9 t-shirts if you're going to do the whole wall hanging project. But meet me back and we'll get started. Now we're ready to start our wall hanging. So we're going to get the big ball of chunky supersized yarn that we just either got or maybe made if you use the t-shirt or the other way that I just showed you. And then the other ways you can just use a big ball. With this kind of merino wool, it's kind of raw and unprocessed and it's quite delicate. So what we're going to do is just unravel it so that we have a bunch of yarn just ready to work with, which isn't all tight in a ball. So it's much looser this way and it's easier to work with. So the very first step is we're going to make a slip knot. So almost all crochet starts with a slip knot, unless you're working with circular kind of work. A lot of the things we're going to make are going to start with a slip knot. So to make that, you're just going to make a circle so it crosses over in front, and then you're going to pop your hand in there and pull through the end. And that gives you a nice slip knot with a little tail. So we're going to be using our hands for this project, but I thought it was a really good way to start. If you want to then go on to use a hook, you will have learned the basic things. So this slip knot is our starting point. And then we're going to do a chain stitch, so to make a foundation chain, which will be right along the top of our wall hanging. So to do a chain stitch, you will insert your hand into the loop you've already made, and you're going to pull up a loop like that, and this is going to be your first stitch, and keep going. So that's 2, 3, I'm going to do 10, 4, 5, 6. So all we're doing is inserting our hand, grabbing hold of the long tail of yarn and pulling it through. I think that's 10. So now we turned our work around. We're ready. This is our foundation chain, and we're ready to do our first row of single crochet into the top loops right here. So to do that, once you've turned it round, you're always going to work into the second from the hook or from where your hand is. So we're not going to work into this first little one, we're going to work into this one. So I'll show you what single crochet looks like. So you're going to start with your hand inside this loop, and you're going to pop your fingers under that second from your hand loop. You're going to pull through one loop, and so then keep your hand in there. You're going to have 2 loops on your wrist, and then you're going to pull through both loops like that, and that's your first single crochet stitch. So we're going to do this all the way along in each of our stitches. So I'll show you again. I have my hand inside the loop. We already have a stitch in this loop, so the next one is this one. So I'm going to put my fingers inside that one, pull the yarn through the first loop, which is going to give us 2 that were our hands inside, and then we're going to grab the yarn and pull it through both those loops, and that's our next stitch. So we're going to do it all the way along. So our hand's inside this loop. We're going to take our fingers, reach inside that loop there, pull up that loop, put both on our arms, and then grab the yarn and pull it through both loops. And we're going to keep going all the way along. So you're going to use exactly the same method to just keep going for each row. You just keep going along with your single crochet all the way along. Remember your chain stitch at the end, and then turning your work and starting another row. You just use exactly the same method the whole time. And then when your wall hanging becomes the right length, meet me back and I'll show you the next step. Okay, so I got to the end of my rows and I've got my wall hanging about the size that I want it. So this was your last stitch. Now I didn't do a turning chain on the end. I just finished with my last single crochet. And to fasten it off, we're going to go ahead and just cut the yarn right here. And then what you're going to do is thread this tail end of yarn through your loop and tighten, and that should give you a nice neat finish point. So that's going to leave you with two tail ends, the one where we began with our very first slip knot, and the one at the end right here. So normally with crochet we would weave in ends, but we definitely can do that with our hands in this situation. So you're just going to go ahead and first decide which way around you want your wall hanging to hang on the wall, and I think it's going to be this way for me. So turn that side down so that you can hide these ends where you don't see them. So to do that, we're just gonna we'll find a bunch of stitches and we'll just thread them through like this, and you won't see them from the other side. It's just to make that a lot neater. So you just pick any different stitches and just tuck it in basically. So now we won't see it on the other side, so that looks pretty good. And then again with our last stitch here, we just tug to make sure it's secure, and then you can use this just to go weave in and out under some of the stitches on the back until you're happy that it's secure, and then you might want to trim it. Okay, and then turn it over, and now we are going to be ready for our stick. Now we have our finished wall hanging, and it's right side down, so this is the back of the wall hanging, and I've got the stick that we want to hang it from, and what to do is just to thread through as though you're just sewing. So we're going to just attach the top of the wall hanging to the stick. So see how it's wrapping around. So I'm going underneath the wood, back behind the top stitch, like this, and I'm going to do that all the way along. And I'll fasten it off at the end, and if you meet me back, we'll have our finished wall hanging. So here's the completed wall hanging. I'm quite pleased with how it turned out. I like it. So I hope if you're following along, you came up with something that you really like, or at least had fun in the process. So I would love to see if anybody actually goes ahead and makes this. I'd love to see it if you want to post on our Facebook page or Instagram. It would be really nice to see what you guys are up to. So if this has given you some interest in crochet, the next video I do is going to be more traditional crochet with a crochet hook and some yarn. So we'll take the skills that we just learned and we're going to develop them a little bit more. So in the meantime, there are so many great resources at the library for crochet. There are some excellent books, including some brand new ones. So you can just go on our catalog and search crochet and have a look at all the things there. The other thing I just wanted to say, just as an aside, is UK and US stitches in crochet are called different things. So for example, this book is a British book, so all the way through it has the United States version in parentheses. So just to make you aware of that, so you don't get too confused. So this has been really fun. Thanks for joining me.